fighting fake news, developing a better public space, etc. Let me say a word about who we are. Not the organizers yet, but starting with the participants. We have here 17 people, very limited because of the health regulation reasons. We hope to be able to invite all of you participants for lunch another time. And then we have more than 200 people online, most of them registered via Vimeo. Some of you, and I'm glad that we can have a look at the room. You can wave to the online participants, please. Yes, we have people registered via Vimeo, this good online video platform, and also people watching us via YouTube. The more than 200 does not count, it does not include, of course, the long tail, the people who will watch this conference afterwards, and the impact of the press coverage that we expect tomorrow. Moreover, we have more than 180 people working on Stars4Media initiatives. A few of them will be on the podium at the end of this session, but most of them are busy working in media companies, as they should. Now, having said that, it's not just a volume game, the number of people attending this meeting. It's mainly about the quality. What type of people do we have? The good news is that nearly half of the participants are from the media sector, which is our goal. We are not interested in talking to Brussels. We are interested in talking to the media people, editorial, marketing, innovation, technology, working on these matters in the different companies. The rest of the audience is quite well balanced between public affairs, R&D, think tanks and academia, and last but not least, the EU institutions. We will hear a little bit more about the EU institutions, and I will make a few hints to the importance of speed and innovation also within the EU institutions, but let me thank them for being here and for being supportive. We all work in the same direction. Right, having talked about the participants, maybe I should tell you a little bit about who is organizing this. It's hosted by EURACTIV, the media that you know. Behind me, you have the main newsroom of the EURACTIV Media Network, so welcome to the yellow office. Actually, this network is publishing in 12 languages altogether from 12 capitals. Organizing a hybrid event is the most difficult thing. We have a good team on the event and video side, so I'm sure it will work. I would like to also thank the team from the MediaLab, Julia, Antonia, and Mark in particular, for organizing this event. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the consortium partners behind 3 projects which are relevant for this event. So we can look at an exhibit with the logos, and if not, I can comment without the exhibit. Let me comment. Voila, perfect. And this is more or less in the order of presentations. We have the feasibility study on content. I told you about keywords, so keyword there is sharing. This feasibility study is delivered by IDATE, a good research center based in Montpellier in France, and the think tank Europe's MediaLab. Of course, this is an EU contract. They will mention at the end of the presentation that there is a new study coming up, which is a follow-up, a blueprint study on media dataspaces. So again, keyword sharing. And this is led by PwC together with a company called Interella, together with Carsa and 2 units of the University of Leuven. Last but not least, it's the most important project for us. We have Stars4Media. Stars4Media is all around innovation, and I would like to welcome warmly our consortium partners. First of all, the Vrije Universiteit Brussels, represented notably by Professor Morganti here in the first row. We have the European Federation of Journalists, so they are gathering the most trade unions all around Europe. And we have the largest organization of publishers, One IFRA. This project is also co-funded by the EU. Having said that, let me tell you a little bit about the goals and the sequence of this event. so we can skip the logos from now on. And indeed, this is a program overview. First of all, we will hear a bit more about the content sharing study. I'll say a few more words on that. And then we have what we call the highlight session with 4 panelists, and it will all be around industrial strategy and data and how can we help speed up the pace of change in the media sector. So again, around sharing and convergence. And then we will have the third session about Stars4Media, some recent beneficiaries and some themes which are emerging. Before saying a little bit more by way of introduction of session 1, let me point out that you can use the chat on Vimeo, and via the chat you can deliver questions. They will be selected and filtered. Some of them will be mentioned by me on the podium during the second session. All of them will get an answer. If you are registered and you put a question, we will send you some answer after the conference. You can also use Twitter, of course, because this session is public. And I suggest that you use the hashtag Media4Europe so that it facilitates mingling with other participants online. Voilà. This is what I wanted to say on the sessions themselves. Let me say a little bit more about the first session, which is the one on sharing infrastructure for content and data. Data is in most talks about policy around media, platform regulations, etc. these days. Data and, of course, artificial intelligence that goes with it. We are supposed to be in the share economy. But actually, think for a moment. Think about the media sector. How much do we really share in the media sector between our media companies? Most of them are SMEs, even if they are big brands, and most of them are not sharing very much content, let alone data. So it's a big challenge. Before passing the floor to my colleagues presenting the results of this study, I'd like to have a little video statement by one of the initiators of this project. One more word of positioning. It started with a pilot project voted by the European Parliament, and it was not a very political initiative. There was a wide consensus behind it. Some smart MEPs thought the media sector does not have enough of a critical mass, and it's important that they should exchange more content and data in order to sustain their business models and also to save our cultures and our languages. This was a grand objective, and now we can listen to Helga Trüppel, who was the main initiator, on what she has to say today.
A pilot project some years ago when I was an MEP on the CULT committee, and I was heavily engaged in all the questions of digitization, what is going on in the United States, what is going on in China, and that we obviously had a lack of own offers, platforms, European ones. And therefore, I wanted the Commission to investigate what we on the European level can do to be a key player in this field of digital content, digital streaming, and all these questions about. And therefore, the Commission had the task to make feasibility studies, to figure out what is possible after the big progress of American and Chinese platform, what can be European possibilities to go on stage in these issues. And therefore, I'm very much delighted to see what will be the results of those studies. So the general idea behind my pilot project, which I launched some years ago, was to develop an own European idea how to create a European platform. A very general idea. We talked about it a lot in the European Parliament with the commissioners, and we were not ready to start it because of national interest, because of a lack of political ambition within the European Parliament and the Commission. But it was clear that we as Europeans, that we have to create our own office if we want to be a player between the American platforms and the Chinese ones. And therefore, I was happy to see that the Commission took this pilot project on board, and now they must have some findings about the feasibility. And therefore, I'm really interested what will be the conference about, because Now it's clear that to have a very general European platform for everything, for film, for data, for media, that obviously does not work like this, and we need a certain sort of breakdown. I think the ambition is to be refocused, and that we have to distinguish or to segment between data on the one hand and content. And news and film are different things, and broadcasting and news coverage is a different thing to a certain extent. And therefore, we really have to investigate what we can do, not to abolish our political ambitions to have European office, but we have to what does work, what does not work, and then to make the most of it. That is my political interest.
Danke, Helpa. And I know she's watching online from now on. The official project title is a rather long one. I would say if I had to choose the name of the report, it's about quality content sharing in Europe. And I would say moving from a political ambition to 3 practical ways. Why do I say that? And let me give you a hint of the results, which of course I've been involved in. Our team indeed found not one solution. That was the original idea, to have one big platform doing everything, but 3 different ideas. One is tools which can be shared between different players without a platform. Secondly, something continuing a trend that exists already around broadcasting. And the third way to go, which is compatible with the other 2, is more innovative and more focusing on news media. But we'll stop now from providing some little hints and perhaps spoilers, and give the floor, first of all, to Jacques Bajon from IDATE, calling in from Montpellier, and then Marc Zundermann. Jacques, it's yours.
Together with Mark, we're going to share with you the main finding of this project, and again, which is aiming at testing the feasibility of a news content sharing platform. Can we have the slides, maybe? Or Thank you. So we broken down the work into 4 phases. The first one was about drawing lessons from the past experiences and to draw up a little bit more of a context. Secondly, we went through the definition of the key requirements a platform should focus on, whatever the configuration is, B2B, B2B2C, or B2C. This is again broken down into building blocks for features and building blocks for technologies. And then we developed through scenarios possible options for these new platforms. We landed at 12, and I'm going to go deeper on that later on. Finally, we selected the best options, and Christophe mentioned the 3 best options for our new platforms, and we did a deep dive on one specific solution, together with a business modeling, I would say high level, and next steps for implementation. Let's keep in mind that this study was stakeholder oriented, and we had strong relationships with stakeholders through a lot of interviews and workshops. And finally, let me thank also partners in the consortium, saying Voxop, Bird and Ganaka. Next, please. Okay, so 12 possible options for a new content sharing platform. Let's say along 2 axes. The first one, which is key, is the involvement of stakeholders. So taking into account news media, like incumbent stakeholders, moving up to social media, internet giants, or web native services, and possibly an option with new vertical players. Crossing with content supply chain, so from production optimization, content sharing, or distribution. Finally, our conclusion is we land into, let's say, the middle, around B2B or B2C, B2B2C solutions that are highlighted in green here. I'm going to go deeper into that in the next slide, please. So tooling and formatting and building blocks. This is two sides here. The first one is about developing best-in-class products thanks to the formats already developed by the best social platforms or web-native services. So this is about innovation in formats, targeting the end user. The second aspect is about developing new shared technical tools that could be used by the overall industry. Typically, translation could be key examples. Christophe mentioned it, there is no creation of a new platform here, but using tools and formats already available on the market or to develop. Second option, B2B2C platform for broadcasters is going further to the news exchanges, B2B news exchanges, and opening up a window to the end user, distributing new content cross-border to the citizen. This service or this option has been already launched somehow by a public service broadcaster during the time of the study, the 1st of July. For these two reasons, one, B2B2C platform for the broadcasters, there is already an action taken, and two, there is no platform on tooling and formatting. We went deeper into the agency syndication model, which is putting news agencies at the middle of everything, I would say. Mark, I'll leave you the floor on that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jack. So I'll take over and diving a bit deeper in the distribution agency model. The agency distribution model builds on the strong distribution power of agencies. And agencies usually license content to news media. In this model that we propose and that we present, agencies would also syndicate content from news agency. So selected content would be made available via a separate independent platform, the agency syndication platform, which is in the center of the model. News agencies would be the core partners of the new platform. Franchise partners could subsequently link with the new platform. Content on this platform would be licensed by the platform either to existing clients as well as to new clients, importantly across borders, which means that it will be opening up a new additional market to agencies and news media. Important point as well, the model is based on revenue sharing, so income will be distributed. There are no upfront payments on this. Which is very important and interesting in this model as well, is that optionally, it could also extend to a marketplace for journalists and freelancers. Via this model, they could feed in their content into the platform via the agencies. Very important is that the focus of the platform is premium cold content. It would not be hot news wires or breaking news. Also important, no new content would have to be produced for the platform. It would be existing content that would be used. This means also that the platform is not a service competing with news media or news agencies. It is an additional service to their activities, so it's not cannibalizing any of the businesses that are currently ongoing. And to be very clear, this platform is not a new European news agency. Beneficiaries of the platform, the first beneficiaries of the platform would be the news media industries, agencies and news media. 80% of the income generated via this new platform would be for them. So next slide, please. In the next steps for implementation, I would just want to highlight two important points, or very important points, there may be three. which will be really, really important is alliance building and change management, as our model that we are suggesting is introducing a new way of doing business and interacting between current players. Partners will have to agree on a strategy on economic terms. In our study, we suggest a certain way forward, but of course, this will have to be agreed between the partners. Private and public financing would help to foster the new platform. This could be, of course, on EU level, if it's public financing, or national level. Both could be possible. We believe that starting next year, the beta version of the platform could be operational in 2023, if people come together and make it happen. Next slide, please. So on the next steps, regarding the study, we will have the executive summary of the study available today on our web pages. So the first findings can be found there. The study will itself be finalized in the next couple of weeks. And we will have a full presentation of the final study, and that's good news, I think, at the upcoming News Media Forum on November 29th. Next to our study, this is also important, Christoph mentioned it before because it's interlinked. The next study following our study is the study on media dataspaces, which we called before the blueprint study. It is just starting now. It is a different consortium, as Christoph mentioned already, but the study will certainly be equally interesting for stakeholders that have been involved in the first study, and I'm sure this will also be addressed in the upcoming panel. So I hand back to Christoph for more details and comments.
Thank you, Jacques and Marc. So you see, this was a bit of a deep dive in one specific aspect of the media sector, which is how to share content and data. And what we have found, I think, is very realistic because it's building on existing actors, building on existing infrastructures, but inventing a new business model. A little bit like some startups would want to do it in the US. Here, it's probably with public funding at the beginning. Later on, in the third session, we will talk about innovations which already happen on the ground. So there are different types of innovations, and this type of innovation projects can play a role in both cases. We will now move in a second to a video statement from Vice President Vera Jourova. You know that there are several commissioners dealing with the media sector one way or another. The primary one is Commissioner Thierry Breton. There is also a role for Maria Gabriel to help fund skills and R&D. And I see a very big role for Vice President Vestager, because rebalancing the marketplace, rebalancing the ecosystem of information between the big US platforms and the media sector is very important. But Vice President Jourova is most dedicated to the media sector, so we are delighted to have her statement. A last hint, I think she makes, I saw her text before, I think she makes a very good 2 points. One is on new initiatives, notably regarding journalist protection. And secondly, even more important to listen carefully, she makes a link between policy developments and various innovation projects, such as those we are discussing today. Vera Jourova has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to participate virtually in this Media for Europe conference. Last time I was with you, the Commission had just presented a comprehensive approach to support the media sector. We had adopted our European Democracy Action Plan and our Media and Audiovisual Action Plan. And we are delivering on these plans, and we are preparing our next steps. 3 weeks ago, the Commission presented its first ever recommendations to Member States on the safety of journalists. Because no journalist should die or be harmed for doing their job. We ask Member States to act to better protect journalists and media professionals. We call for the creation of independent national support services, including helplines, legal advice, psychological support, and shelters for journalists and media professionals facing threats. We also call for an increased protection of journalists during demonstrations, greater online safety, and particular support to female journalists. There is a strong focus on the training of journalists and media professionals and all those involved in their safety. We will now closely monitor how Member States apply these recommendations, and I know I can rely on your vigilance too. There will be more to come, as announced by European Commission President von der Leyen in her 2021 State of the Union address. We will propose a new legislation to protect media freedom and pluralism. The Media Freedom Act will be adopted in the course of the next year. We are also working on an initiative to protect journalists and civil society rights defenders against abusive litigation, the so-called Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation, or SLAP. This initiative will include legislation and recommendations. At the same time, we continue increasing our funding support and our work to bring funding opportunities together under a news banner. Over the summer, we published a €7.6 million call for journalism partnerships, financed for the first time through the Creative Europe programme. We strongly believe that cooperation across borders and across media can bring new ideas and nurture innovation. This is what we see today with Stars4Media. We also support studies and discussions like the one you have today on content sharing and data to foster synergies. This is an excellent preparation, as we will hold in November a European News Media Forum focused on the industrial transformation of the media sector. This is crucial, as we need a strong media sector to fulfill its essential role in our democratic societies. I thank you and wish you fruitful discussions.
Well, I'd like to say thank you in return, because this is a strong endorsement and very encouraging, not only for the projects which take place currently, but especially for the coming years, notably this interconnection between policy initiatives and innovation projects, including the new news bundle under Creative Europe and possibly other programs. I'd like to now briefly introduce our panel on the same topic, so I will not be much longer in terms of introduction. We have a panel with two people physically present, Irene here, which I will introduce in a second, and Alberto. And we have two people who are speaking online from respectively Warsaw and Lisbon. It's interesting that we have nearly two geographic extremes. I'm not saying political extremes. And of course, we have a variety of backgrounds and nationalities on this podium. I'd like to start with Roman. Roman is editor-in-chief of Gazeta Wyborska, one of the main media in Europe, and I would say very much on the front of press freedom. And I had a chance to interview Roman several years ago. We interacted recently again, and we just heard the Vice President of the Commission talking about protecting journalists. She was indirectly hinting at rule of law, etc. Is it all you need, or do you need something else as well? Can you tell us a little bit from your experience, Roman? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Hello, everybody. Of course, it's very important to listen Vice President Jourova about the safety of journalists in Europe, in the European Union, and the last action, the media action plan. But of course, as you remember, we talked 5 years ago, and I share my thoughts with you, Christoph, and said that European Union must perceive that the media sector is important as a agriculture sector, as an industry sector. And of course, we don't need any subsidizing system for media sector, but the real money for development, for the new technologies, for the content sharing platform, etc., is needed. And the last decision of this European Commission is very helpful because, of course, the time in my country right now is very special. We see the rising of the populist Euroscepticism, disinformation. We are under attack from the government for the last 5 years. The government decided to stop at any advertisement in my newspaper and in some other media outlet. Of course, this is only the outlets which are critical. If we talk about the ruling party, we have right now in Poland the crazy time because the main source of the disinformation and producing the news, the fake news, is a public television, the big public broadcaster controlled by the ruling party and the politician from Law and Justice Party. So, of course, we have many legal action from the government and the people linked to government. We have more than 80 legal action right now. Of course, this is the pure stuff, and we are waiting for the new legislation from the European Union and the European Commission to stop this problem, because this is the rising problem in Poland, of course, in Hungary, for example. One more from my perspective. Of course, we have a big problem, political problem, if we talk about the relation between the Warsaw and Brussels and the Paris, Berlin, etc. But we have a big problem with the democracy. And in the media independence, freedom of speech is one of the most important thing if we talk about the healthy democracy in European Union, and that's why I think we need to collaborate, we need to cooperate, and we need more action from the European Commission.
Thank you very much, Roman. I repeat the last sentence. We need more action from the European Commission. You have addressed a number of legislative initiatives. You were also saying we need more investments in new technologies, and I saw Alberto nodding, so maybe he will say something about that in a few minutes. I hear from the organizers that we have to speed up because I was a bit slow myself. So I move directly to Irene Bram. Irene is leading the Bertelsmann Stiftung. You probably know about this German organization, but actually she's leading it in Washington. And good news, the borders are open again. So we have Irene right next to me here in Brussels. And if people move, perhaps the ideas move as well, and maybe even the initiatives for doing something about these challenges in the media sector. So could you tell us briefly if you see some similarities in the issues between Washington and Brussels, between America and the EU, and perhaps even some joint initiatives?
Yeah, well, I definitely, and picking up on Roman's remark, I definitely see the same problems. So we have problems where journalists are being threatened, where regional and local news media is kind of suffering. We also see a lot of new innovative ways of producing and disseminating news content. But then in the United States, we have, of course, these very big data monopolies, and which basically acquire immediately any kind of innovative solution that comes up to the market. So that is so there are we have basically we face the same challenges. Maybe there are also kind of similar solutions. I think here in Europe, and I'm very grateful to the European Commission that they are rather active in this area. We don't see that same thing happening in the United States at high federal government level. I think they're slowly starting to wake up, maybe in particular thanks to the latest Facebook scandal, which of course we all read about in the newspapers earlier this week. Where we see action is more at state level and at regional level. And then mostly that action is financed by private institutions, mostly by think tanks. So I'm still kind of, I think my mic stopped working.
It's okay. Just finish your statement.
Yeah, so I remain hopeful, and I hope that maybe there can be, in one of these transatlantic discussions we have, is that the future of news media can be one of the topics that is being discussed.
Okay. So I will memorize 3 things from your statement. There is hope for more cooperation, but it's taking time, and the EU is more of a pioneer than the US. Things are happening at the state level, and I would say this could be an inspiration for Europe, because there are a number of countries where the media sector is not properly accompanied, despite EU initiatives. And you insisted very much on the data giants. There are plenty of opportunities with data, especially if we bring data and content together, like the platforms have done. But let's have an integrative perspective. I'm now turning to Lisbon and looking at Maria Joan Rodrigues. She's president of FEPS, which is the political foundation close to the Party of European Socialists, but it's of course an independent think tank. Maria Joa was minister, I remember, at the time of the Lisbon agenda, already then providing an integrated approach, social, economic, and environment that we still need. She has been an MEP as well, so she knows both the economic side of things and the legislative. And you are normally very good, Maria Joan, at integrating things together. You read about all these initiatives: Digital Single Act, Digital Services Act, Digital Market Act, Media Action Plan, Democracy Action Plan, all the initiatives on AI, etc. There are plenty of projects, some that we know, some that we don't. What would you make out of all that? Could we have a European strategy for the media sector?
Christophe, hello everybody, and great pleasure to join you. Look, yes, it is possible, and this is necessary, to have a European strategy to provide to citizens what they really need, which is the access to quality, plural information, and provided with full independence. We need this everywhere, because this is about the basis for us to govern our societies. And this is a new infrastructure for democracy we need to build up together. Right now, there is a conflict, in fact, about access to this kind of quality, plural information, is because we have a very unbalanced ecosystem. On one hand, we have strong monopolies who play as gatekeepers. On the other hand, we have a plurality of actors trying to provide this kind of information, but they are in deep trouble. So we do need to have a comprehensive strategy to provide this quality information with plurality and with the European dimension, because we need to talk to each other in Europe, to know each other better. And right now, yes, we have important initiatives being launched. It was interesting again to listen to Commissioner Jourova. And my assessment is the following, in telegraphic terms. First of all, we need to update our regulation. Yes, we have the Digital Service Act being prepared, the Digital Markets Act being prepared, but we need to have something more precise on the news sector regarding the protection of those who innovate to provide good information. Secondly, we need to make sure that there is the right kind of infrastructure. And you just presented today this very interesting idea of a new platform for content sharing. I found it very well designed. All the details presented by Jacques and Marc. And this is really the kind of infrastructure we need to have to support those who provide quality information and they want to reach citizens. But then we also need to have capacity building. This is about skills, and this is about finance. And yes, we do have 3 important European programs which should provide this: the Creative Europe, the InvestEU, and Horizons. So let's make the news sector visible in these 3 big programs. They involve a lot of resources. And finally, we need to have much stronger cooperation among the actors and to have a stronger governance of this sector. That's why this media forum, now meeting on November, is so important, because actors need to organize at the European level and make their voice heard. So let me conclude by saying the following. Right now, by the way, I belong to the high-level group for democracy, composed by former commissioners, ministers, and chaired by Van Rompuy, so the former president of the European Council. And we are very concerned with the role of the news in Europe as the central infrastructure for democracy to strive in Europe. And look, what is at stake is exactly this. Europeans, they deserve to have quality information about themselves. They need to control this. This is a matter of democracy and a matter of European sovereignty, I believe. So this is my assessment so far.
Thank you very much, Maria Joan. There's not much I can add on this overview of the different policy and project development. I would say you speak like a commissioner and somebody who has an in-depth experience of his processes. Before giving the floor to Alberto, I'd like to point to this little tablet where I receive a filtered down version of the questions put on the chat. I think there is a lot of activity on social media under the hashtag Media4Europe. You can also use a chat of this video Vimeo device in order to send some questions. And I will take some of the questions just after Alberto's intervention. Alberto Rabakin is a senior official with DG Connect in the Media Directorate that is developing all these initiatives. I think the Media Directorate was created 7 years ago. The first mandate, you were focusing on other things, notably the Audiovisual Directive, the Copyright Directive, etc. I can sense that there is a lot more momentum now, not only on policy, but also on innovation projects. There have been several changes, and maybe you can explain them to us.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Christophe, for the invitation. I think it's a great opportunity to give you a little bit an overview of what we have on the plate for supporting media innovation, and not only, because I think we all witness that the Commission changed gear towards media, and it was understood that there was the need to increase the activities in terms of policy and in terms of financial support, in particular for innovation. That's why both the European Democracy Action Plan and the Media Action Plan have kind of present a new set of actions. The vice presidents focus mainly on the policy action. I will give you a little bit more details on what we intend to do or what we have already done to support the sector. And I think the Vice President mentioned the call that was issued during the summer for journalism partnership. I think this is a very good start, because these are agile grants that allows the ecosystem to quickly put in place and develop projects that can bring innovation in, let's say, with a quick turnaround. But we also have a quite a big set of activities and financial opportunities that look more to the medium and long term. And I refer in particular to what is under Horizon Europe and Digital Europe. Under Horizon Europe, we have currently 2 calls that are open. One call is for media innovation in general, which includes also a specific topic for the creation of virtual reality lab that accounts for 26 million euros. And here is where we look to the long term, where we want to see new tools and services that might that should support the digital transformation of the sector. And we also have another call, I think, with 15 million that is dedicated on disinformation and that will develop tools and will research new approaches also to use artificial intelligence for the detection of disinformation. More on the medium term, I would say, and I would like to focus on this a little bit, is what will come out with Digital Europe. Digital Europe is not approved yet, is not yet adopted, the first work program, but we are at the end, and I think I can disclose few details. We have their room, it's not a secret anymore, we have their opportunities, a financial opportunity there for creating, for supporting the creation of a media data space. And what I have heard today goes, I think that after what I heard today, I think we are going in the right direction because we are giving funding to create a technological infrastructure that should be, to a certain extent, shared by different media sectors, but can also accommodate the differences, the different needs of the sector, of the broadcaster, of the publisher, and of the news media. So we kind of call you, the audience here, to be ready to help us, because we will soon need to shape the call for proposal. And this will require a lot of effort from our side, but I believe also from your side, because we need input from you in order to make sure that we make this call right, so that it can accommodate, as I said, different needs from different sectors, but at the same time, the aim will also be to build, a common infrastructure for sharing data and for sharing content. When we talk about data, especially in the media sector, we also talk about content. So it's not only data related to user preferences, user behavior, but it's also content. So it would be great if you can pull these forces together to ensure that we go all together in the right direction. And I will stop here, and then maybe we can go more in detail if necessary.
Absolutely, we can have a second round, and indeed there will be some questions put to you as well, Alberto. So in the meantime, I got a selection of the questions that were put on the chat. The good news is that there are several questions, very practical ones, about the first presentation on content and data sharing. And this is in line with what I said at the very beginning. Half of the participants in this conference are working in media companies out there in the countries and not focusing on policy development. So I really like that. It doesn't mean that we can answer the questions right away, because they are very specific. They will all get an answer. And I warn you about a question that will come later, Alberto, perhaps at the end of this round. 2 questions, in fact. One is, what's the status, it's a question from Andrei Skolke, what's the status of having an EU-funded social media platform? So think about your answer. You have a few minutes for that. It's not an easy one. And I would like to mention other questions, because some of you in the panel may want to answer it as well. There are several questions, for example, from Maria Togina and from Neri Ozer regarding the involvement of young journalists across Europe, which is important. It's partly tackled by Stars4Media later, but maybe you have some first answers, because innovating in terms of business models and structures is good. We also need to feed the people pipeline, so to say, with fresh blood. And there is another question regarding the link between all this and media literacy. I add one more question for Alberto, so you can think about it. How about the use of consumer media and the link between that and the media plurality? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. It's probably the challenge of the gatekeepers who have most of the data, and to what extent does it affect media pluralism in Europe. So while Alberto thinks about these difficult questions, I would like to invite, maybe we can look at all the speakers at the same time. I would like to invite others in the following order to give a few additional views on the type of questions that I've mentioned, involving young journalists and the link between the innovation in the media and media literacy in order to sustain a better public space. I suggest we take the following people. First Irene sitting next to me, then Roman, and then briefly Maria Joanne. Irene, something?
Thank you, Christoph. I already had kind of noted in my mind that I wanted to talk about media literacy because, I mean, we are kind of talking about the supply side of news media, but, you know, we also need to think about the demand side, and you can only create a sustainable supply side if there's sufficient demand. And for that demand, I think, you know, we need to work a little bit more on media literacy and also on digital media literacy. And I see when I talk to the young people and even to my 20-year-old son is that they often don't know that who's providing the news or the information they're reading. And to give you kind of an example, in the United States, a very active, both broadcaster, but also very active on social media is the Russian state-financed RT News. And a lot of people don't even know who's behind it. So I think, you know, educating the people about all these actors, who they are and who's behind them, I think that is very important. And very quickly on young journalism, I'm quite hopeful there. And I see when I look in Europe, there are a few initiatives where you have young journalists consortium, which are really kind of creating a space because they bring news in a different way. And maybe just want to mention, and that is one with I'm happen to work with quite often, is a consortium based here in Brussels, and they're called RE Europe.
Okay, great. Let me mention right away a question which I will put to Maria Joanne, but later, so she can think about it. Because Mark Zunderman and I, we were on the high-level expert group on disinformation. And at the time, there was a code of practice issued, signed by all the major platforms, and they committed to basically promoting quality content versus fake news, to avoid the typical syndrome of censoring fake news. It's better to use algorithms. They committed to using so-called trustworthiness indicators. And so, Maria Joanne, how do you explain that 4 years later, they have still not done it? How come the EU is not strong enough to impose the implementation of things which have been agreed already? So while you think about it, I would like to turn to Roman, because we talked about young journalists, we talked about media literacy. How is it in your journalist circles in Poland? Are people aware of the dire state of their sector? Are they basically following the wind of the current government? Or is there some resistance, and do you need help from outside?
As I said in the first part of our meeting, it's a crazy time in my country, but we talk about more. We talk about the news source of incomes and news source of journalism, journalist tools, etc., etc. It's very important because my newspaper in the last 5 years changed very deep. Right now, of course, we develop our digitalization. Our strategic goal right now is of course our website, and we want to have as many as we can subscribers on internet. Right now we have more than 260,000 subscribers on internet. Is a very good result in this part of the Europe and this part of the world, and this is very important to have a situation that we still conduct our mission. We still very important newspaper. If we talk about the control the government, control the ruling party, control the people in power. Because if you have money, you have an independence, and this is of course the straight link between these two areas. Young journalists, of course, we have a special program for the young journalists. We want to have more young journalists, but I still believe in I still believe in people, and still believe in young people. I don't agree that the young people are not that they don't like the traditional media, etc., etc. So we develop in the last 5 years our teams, the social media teams. This is very important to be in these areas where the young people are.
Great, thank you, Roman, and I'm sure you will listen with interest to what is currently going on under Stars4Media and planned for the future. So back to Maria Joan, I put you this difficult question. How come the EU cannot tackle the platforms, even on things which they have agreed already? Let me add another difficult ball. There is now talk about a Media Freedom Act. There's plenty of legislative initiatives already in the Parliament, and you know these processes. Isn't there a risk that there is plenty of talk about rule of law and legal things, etc., and not enough helping the people like Roman to innovate and to survive, more from an economic and technology viewpoint? How do you see it?
Well, building on my experience as a European policy maker, look, policy making in the European Union sometimes is a kind of jungle. But things can move and decisions can be taken, provided that we have the right kind of coalition of actors pushing in the right direction, and provided that we have the right kind of message. From my viewpoint, the message about this proposal you referred to should start like that. Journalists are a beautiful job, a crucial job for our democratic societies to develop themselves. Those who say that, we no longer need journalists because we have social networks and this is outdated profession, they are completely wrong. Journalists, professional working for quality and plural information are, I believe, vital jobs. And recently we had, by the way, discussion about who are the vital jobs because of the pandemics. I do think journalists should be considered vital jobs. They should count on the good conditions to work. By the way, let me also refer that according to the European Pillar of Social Rights, those who work for platforms, they should count on the fundamental rights of access to social protection and the training and skills. This is extremely important for journalists, but the starting point is to say to be a journalist is a job of the future.
Great. That's a strong statement, Maria Joan. And I hope the EU officials and the MEPs who are listening hear this about skills and innovation, not just technology orientation. Innovation and technology, they go in the same direction, but they are actually two different things. So thank you, Maria Joan. I'm now turning to Alberto. By the way, for all the participants, in about 15 minutes, we will start the last session about Stars4Media. In the meantime, there will be a coffee break of about 10 minutes. So we have 5 or 6 more minutes for this panel, which is, I'm sure, plenty of time for you, Alberto. So you had 2 main questions to answer. Is there anything behind the idea of an EU social media platform? And second question, perhaps even more practical, if I may add, what's the link between media innovation, media survival, and access to data?
Okay, yes, I think the questions are challenging, and certainly we have already financed several projects that look to possible new social media models, because we shouldn't follow, I would call it the bad example, although it's produced a lot of money for certain company. But we are watching now that these models that are only focusing on profit are not really benefiting the society. So we should look at models that are more decentralized, that are more respectful for European values, more transparent. The algorithms should be more transparent. Also, probably users should be able to, to better understand the algorithms and to control them to a certain extent. So we are financing we had finance under Horizon Europe, and we will finance under Horizon Europe also projects that look into this direction. Regarding the question on data, this is why if data is vital for the survival of the sector, the answer is yes, it is. And this is why we are trying with this media data space initiative we are trying to support the sector to move in the right direction, to be equipped with the necessary technology. And I think this is of paramount importance. And here again, my call to all of you to listen up and to make sure that we use this opportunity in the most fruitful way.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Irene will add something very short, and then I'll say a few final words for this session.
May I be a bit of a flamethrower here? On the question on can we have a European social media platform? I think we tried. There have been private initiatives that tried in the past, and it didn't succeed because you need to create a mass where, of course, the Americans have an immediate advantage because there are over 300 English-speaking people living in the country. I think also from the media sector, early on, there have been warning signals to the policymakers and to the politicians. And there was just a lack of political will to take any actions. And now, 15 years later, we basically have to deal with the damage that has been done. So I'm going to leave that there.
Well, thank you for this provocative remark, and I think you are absolutely right. If I can go back to the feasibility study that was presented before, it was not trying to have a social media platform, but it was looking at one aspect of their role, which is indeed to share content, articles, etc. And it would have been nice if we had found that it was possible to have one big European platform for all this type of content, and that was not the result of our feasibility study. So we probably have to be pragmatic and to work step by step, and especially segment by segment, but with greater speed. I've said from the outset, sorry for self-quoting, that I would like to use several sets of keywords. There are two sets which I would like to repeat. One is convergence and sharing, and I think Alberto was also pleading in that direction, that we open up, that people work together, etc. What I see in the media sector is that we are living in silos. We talk of the silos in the institutions, and they exist, but we have silos within the media sector, and in the media sector the borders are higher between the countries than in other sectors. So there is a huge effort to make there. It's not about technology, it's not even about strategy, it's about having relevant people to do it. And the other side of things is speed, because we are still far too slow. And I hope the new momentum, which both Alberto and I have addressed, the new momentum behind the EU institutions, I hope that it will be really sustained. In a number of countries like Poland, where Roman comes from, there will not be a positive impetus from the national governments, let's be clear. It will also not come from the United Nations, that's also clear, even though there are some global ambitions, etc. It probably has to come from both the EU institutions and from the private sector itself, not only the media sector, but also foundations. And that's why I'm delighted to have the foundation world well represented here with FEPS, Bertelsmann Stiftung, and our small foundation, Europe's MediaLab. We now move into a little coffee break. I see that it's nearly 20 to 2, which is exactly the time I was indicated, so we have caught up a little bit. Thank you very much to this outgoing panel. There will be a little bit of technical change. Some people may want to use it as a technical break or a coffee break, and we meet in exactly 10 minutes again. You don't have to switch off Vimeo or YouTube. It remains online. Stay tuned. By the way, while you grab your coffee, etc., let me mention that there have been some more questions, but I was not able to take them. There have been many more that were not filtered, but even from the filtered one, there was one from lie detector. There was another hint regarding a platform with multiple languages. Some exist, but in very specialized area. We will try to answer those questions online, and you can use the break to bring even more questions. We will mingle in the room during the break, and I'm not technically able to take questions from the room here. So see you back in now 8 minutes at 10 to 2. Thank you.
They are illustrative of what we wanted to reach with this Stars4Media pilot program, which is a program that aims to innovate the European media sector through the exchange of competencies, skills, and the exchange of media professionals around innovative ideas.
This kind of a program was an amazing opportunity for a startup with developing something so new that is still a bit difficult to grasp what it is.
We just developed the first cross-border investigative report about this topic.
It's a podcast show dealing with Europe, focusing on 6 national conflicts that today still tear apart somehow, each to a different extent, some of the member states of the EU.
Our aim is to discuss and investigate structural racism using solutions journalism approach.
Reports on the consequences of the pandemic, but also on bigger European challenges.
The point of a pilot project is to test an idea for a permanent program. When I was a student activist, we lobbied for Erasmus to be transformed from a pilot project to a permanent program. Stars4Media and brother projects, so to say, will never be as big, but they could become permanent.
I do think that Stars4Media is a very good project showcasing the strength, creativity and innovation of media professionals in difficult times.
It's now with COVID, when for the first time I believe that this independent media network is in real risk of extinction.
European Parliament recognizes that direct funding for culture and creative sector through EU programs is inevitable limited, but believes that smart use of existing instruments can help. European Parliament believes that the most effective way to deliver such support is through the already existing sector-specific guarantee facility under Creative Europe.
It is very important for maintaining editorial independence in these times. At the same time, we are all aware that funding the media sector is challenging from this perspective. Funding available directly from the state may put in danger editorial independence, and there have been examples of member states, we all know them.
At the EU level, to solve these disruptive effects at the media market, it requires both legislation and financial support mechanism.
The long-term aim of the Commission is to provide stable funding to media freedom and pluralism projects.
When it comes to the news program, you know that I very much support that. I think it's important to innovate here, to give space, as I said, in terms of funding, also to find new ways of strengthening the business models.
So we are back again. Same people in the room here, same people online. Maybe a few more actually, because we now talk about Stars4Media, which is this great program. It's not a project anymore, it's a program that Stephen will explain, and he will highlight for people. Let me say just a few words about that. In a way, the previous sessions were kind of top-down. It was talking about strategy, EU policies, EU programs, etc. Now this is a bottom-up approach. And our Commission colleague Alberto Rabakin was making a kind of call for ideas regarding specifications in the projects or the programs for next year. Well, there are plenty of ideas from Stars4Media. We have received 100 applications and we have selected projects from 60 companies, which is really a vibrant innovation sphere. Before Stephen talks more about the current crop of initiatives, let me say a few words about the future, because we've talked in previous panels about what will happen in the coming years. So let me connect Stars4Media with that talk. It's not a secret that we are preparing a third edition of Stars4Media. It will be quite different. It will focus more on business and newsroom transformation. It will include larger projects. And we have made an application for EU funding. You heard both the Vice President Jourova and Alberto Rabakin talk about the Creative Europe Journalism Partnership program. I find it a great development. This is part of the news bundle, which is foreseen in the Media Action Plan. And if we are evaluated by people that I don't know, I don't even know their names, if we are evaluated positively, then we could continue and enlarge this program. This is a perspective, and this is one of the reasons for building this bridge between policy developments and practical media innovation. Having talked too much already, I now hand over to Stephen to lead the next session.
Thank you very much, Christophe. Can you hear me? And could I have my slides on screen, please? Wonderful, thank you. So thank you for having me. I am Stephen Fossard, Project Director of the Global Alliance for Media Innovation, which is a part of the World Association of News Publishers. We're one of the 4 partners of Stars4Media for 2 years now, and my role today is for 30 minutes to give you some insights on Stars4Media's 2nd edition, which is now ongoing and has been for a couple of months. So I've got a couple of slides to give you some data, some figures, and then we'll actually deep dive into meeting actually a couple of representatives of the projects we selected. Next slide, please. So what is Stars4Media? For the people who haven't heard yet about Stars4Media, Stars4Media is an exchange and a funding program for media professionals in Europe, trying to support innovation in the news media industry. There are 3 levels of partnerships and collaboration that Stars4Media tries to support. The first one is cooperation between media organizations. The second one is cross-border cooperations. And the third one is interdisciplinary, meaning simply trying to get, for example, tech profiles to work with editorial profiles or other types of profiles you find in traditional news media companies. So by trying and encouraging these 3 levels of cooperation, Stars4Media hopes to strengthen the quality, competitiveness and resilience of the European media sector. Next slide, please. So when we published the call for proposal at the beginning of this year, I think it was April, around April, we'd already set out that we wanted to receive proposals in 3 areas, which we call thematic waves. The first one was journalism, trust and participation. I won't read the slides, you should have them on your screen. But just to say the second one, media technology and marketing, which is one side of innovation I'm particularly involved with. And the wave 3 is other innovations, which kind of encompasses what didn't fit in the others and gave us the opportunity to accept the most ideas possible. Next slide, please. So in numbers, what actually happens, because we already had some results, we received 100 applications. This is substantial. It means that there's a will. It hopefully means there's a need. And this representing nearly 250 media professionals, so the people who wrote these initiatives and sent them into us, is showing that really there is interest from the media industry to participate in these programs. So after a process of jury selection, we selected 30 initiatives, which represented, I think, around 60 media organizations. So this is impact. This is concrete impact for you in Europe, in the news media sector. We have on the program now 185 media professionals that started working together back in mid-September, so we're close to the start, and based in 22 European countries and receiving just over 1 million euros in financial support. So that's just to give you, some key figures. Next slide, please. I won't go through all of them, but as you can see there, we have some interesting media names. We have Le Monde, for example, in France, the Czech news agency, which is obviously a news agency, but also some tech companies that are in there, media-related, of course, but trying, to create this healthy ecosystem for innovation in the media industry. This was the result of the first call. Next slide, please. And the second deadline, which was in July, brought in these participants. And again, you can see we go from a very local newspaper in Alsace in France to larger organizations in Europe. Next slide, please. Now, this is giving you an idea of where the participants come from. As you can see, it goes from Spain to Slovakia, through Ireland, Finland, and Hungary, with obviously a little bit more people in the West. But as the next slide will tell us, we actually have really good representation from East, South, North, and West, which we're quite satisfied with. Next slide, please. Male, female, gender balance is, we think, very good, 55-45 ratio, which we're very happy with, and the participants themselves should be very proud of themselves. Next slide, please. Now, in the next weeks and months, if you're interested in Stars4Media and going into the actual projects, our teams are going to be writing about articles about each of the projects and how they're doing in their implementation. You can find this on the website stars4media.eu. Follow our LinkedIn group. We also have a Twitter account. You'll find everything on Stars4Media. If you don't remember the URL, you can find it on any search engine that you want. Next slide, please. Now, today we didn't have too much time, so we couldn't have everyone participate, but we divided the 30 initiatives into what we call 6 macro topics, which you have now on the screen, and we chose 4 of those and 4 representative of those macro topics today, and we're actually going to talk to them if they appear on my screen. I think next slide, I'm just going to give you their names, and then they can appear on the screen. Next slide, please. Yes. So we have 4 representatives today, so they are speaking in the name of their initiative. So first of all, we have Thomas Seymat, who works for Euronews in Lyon, France, and he'll be representative in an initiative called Building Sustainable Revenue Models with Community-Centric Media Trainings. Next up will be Andy Taylor. Actually, it's not in the right order. Apologies for that. That's my mistake. Andy Taylor, based in Cardiff, and he will be talking about the project Smart Podcast Accordion. Then we will go to Lois Capila, based in Ireland, working for the Dublin Inquirer. Her project is about engaging the disengaged with local news. And finally, last but not least, from Denmark, Christopher Heckert, who will talk about the project Let the Money Talk, a data tool on public spending. And if the magic happens, they should appear on the screen right now. Give give them a couple of seconds. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, everyone. So, as I said, we're now going to speak to each of them just so that it's not a big mess of a conversation. I'm going to do one after the other, if you don't mind. I've had chats with these guys over the last couple of weeks, so hopefully this will make for another 20 minutes, we're on perfect timing, guys. So you know the rules. We don't have a lot of time per person, but I'm going to now jump in to talk to Thomas. If you can put him up on full screen. Thomas Seymat. Hello, Lyon.
Hi.
Working for Euronews. Thomas, I told you when we spoke, I'd like you to give a couple of words about your project, but literally 2 or 3 sentences for the audience to understand what your project is. 30 seconds, no more.
Sure. So in 30 seconds, our project with EURACTIV Poland and Fathom, we are working to help media diversify their portfolio by creating media training, could be media literacy, working with journalism school, etc., and implementing elements of engaged journalism, meaning creating communities around those trainings so that those trainings are better, more engaging for the audience, and ultimately a better value proposition for the media and helping them reach sustainability.
Can you still hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for keeping the time. There was just a little problem with my mic. I think it might be solved now. Thomas, you're part of this Stars4Media program. Happily, for a couple of weeks, you've started implementing. What stands out for you as the great advantage of cross-border collaboration and basically these type of programs that encourage innovation through working externally now in another country, in another organization, etc. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I think what stands out the most for me is being able to bring a diversity of people in the room, right? The virtual room, so to speak. And diversity has a lot of meaning, but of course, diversity of countries, France, Poland, the UK, diversity of organization, scale of organization, but also topic research, topic that we write about. So this diversity coming together, right? And the sum of the part is the sum is greater of the sum of the part. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Sorry, makes it for a very interesting ecosystem for us to bounce ideas out of each other, and we come with our different background, our different skills, and yeah, of course, it's important to realize that we have different values and different perspective on the issue, but we're still committed to this project and with the financial sustainability of media in mind. And you know, I've done this European Erasmus Mundus Master's in Degree in Journalism that was very transnational as well. There was over 30 nationalities in my classroom, and now I'm working again with a diverse newsroom. And once again, thanks to Stars4Media, I can be in this very diverse, very transnational, very open environment to innovate, and that's something I wish more organization would provide, and we're grateful for Stars4Media to have involved us.
Thank you. So I get from what you say that obviously coming from a journalism background and having done Erasmus Mundus, you obviously know how useful it can be to be working together with diverse backgrounds, diverse countries, but also actually backgrounds and different skills. So, for example, as I mentioned before, editorial skills, technical skills, business development, which I think now you're responsible for. Thank you very much. We'll now go to our next speaker, Andy Taylor, if you can bring him up on the screen, full screen, who is, I think, in Cardiff. Hello, hello, Andy. Now, you have a specific position because you have a background in journalism and media. You were, correct me if I'm wrong, a radio producer for years, but now you actually in this program representing Bulb, which is actually a tech company. So my question
Yeah,
is
that's
for
right.
you. Thanks. So my question is for you. What, when you joined Stars4Media, what as a tech company were you looking for in this media environment?
We were looking for an opportunity to put our ideas and our innovations into action. We invented a new way of listening to podcasts, one that gives the listener complete control over duration without losing tone, structure, or listenability, and that's what Accordion is. But we needed to test it out in real life. And through Stars4Media, we were able to partner with Bull Media in Brussels, and on their podcast series about Angela Merkel, which is out now, and you can go to accordion.live and see the first 3 episodes there and have a play around with the durations. You know, we were given some really high quality content to do a real life test of our new technology. And so we could actually get it out there far quicker than if we'd have been working with, I don't know, having to pitch to massive organizations to try and get in through the door there.
Thanks, and thank you for actually explaining what the project was. I forgot to ask you. Apologies for that. So with this in mind and the project in mind, and you said, I think you managed to connect through Stars4Media. We helped you connect with this player in France, which had the content you needed. You had the tech solution, they had the content, and you worked together. When we discussed the other day, you mentioned to me that what you thought was a real advantage of Stars4Media is the simplicity and the flexibility with which we actually put you together, and you started working in a bit of a plug and play way. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I was interested in Stars4Media as an idea, but I didn't have a partner in mind. And I went to Stars4Media. I explained what we had with Accordion. And very quickly, they were able to suggest some partner organizations. And the first one I met up with, Antoine, we just clicked straight away. What's great about it is that we're 2 organizations of a similar size. And me and Antoine are able to sort something out in 1 hour on Zoom that, having worked in big media organizations myself, you know, these things would have taken months, if not years. They would have just got chewed up in red tape. And, you know, me and Antoine can get some great content out there in an innovative way, using brand new technology, and we can do it really quickly, really flexibly.
Thank you. That's really encouraging for us. I mean, one of the goals from the beginning of Stars4Media was to keep the complications as low as possible, and that includes also the admin burden that it can be in some of these funding and exchange programs. So we're happy you appreciate this type of program. This brings me to Lois. Hello, Ireland. Can you give us just 30 seconds about what your project is, please?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty simple. So what we're doing is basically going to neighborhoods with low voter turnout and seeing what they want from local news, and a really diverse menu, from coverage of specific things to a chance to write paid freelance stories, to training, to getting involved in bigger projects, and then having them vote on it and try to provide that. And then sort of that the idea is that will feed into new readers, hopefully turning into loyal readers, maybe turning into subscribers, and, you know, serving people who might feel that local news isn't serving them. And we're doing this in partnership with a non-profit called Social Spider, which runs a newspaper called Enfield Dispatch in London as well.
That's, thank you. That's very interesting. When we were discussing, of course, something came up. We were talking about financing. And of course, it is important, but it's the first time we've talked about it today after, I think, nearly 20 minutes of talking. Can you tell us a bit more about what you told me the other day about the aspect of financing through Stars4Media?
Yeah, I guess for us, it's just sort of massively important. We were kicking this idea around for quite a long time, but because we're a small organization, sort of no matter what we do, it always has an element of risk, and the margin for error is very small. So with this, I guess it gave us a chance to test this, to see how it works, to get a sense of sort of the resources that it would take and what it would take to build it into the newspaper's day-to-day ongoing operations. And then obviously, as I said, we're using it to to hopefully drive subscriptions. So seeing what the payback there is in those terms, and how many times we'd have to replicate it to make it fully sustainable for us. So yeah, so basically it made it possible. Like,
and I mean, we have to say, I mean, the Stars4Media first and second edition, it's a large amount of funding. If you look at it globally, it's, you know, more than 1 million, but per project, it's not enormous amounts of funding. And I think what came out of our conversation is it's not about really the amount. It's about what you said to me was it gave me the opportunity to take away the financial risk of testing something over 2 or 3 months. And this is crucial. Experimentation and testing, innovating over a couple of months. And what we're doing is just, we say in French, mettre le pied à l'étrier. I don't know how you translate that in English, but just yeah, some very small startup help to take away the financial risk. After the 3 or 4 months, you can decide if it didn't work. It doesn't matter, you haven't lost anything. If it did work, then you can decide to invest further into it. So so this is really important. It's no secret that we've you already mentioned it, Christophe. We've submitted a third edition of Stars4Media for hopefully next year. We don't know what is going to come of this, but it's slightly different in the sense that we're actually going to hopefully finance less project, more money, but at the end of the day, more people within the organization. So there are different types of funding. In this case, obviously, we're talking small amount of funding. We're not talking massive startup seed funding. Anyway, to my last speaker, Christopher. Hello, Denmark. Hello, Christopher. I know you're happy to be part of Stars4Media. We've done a couple of events together within the OneIFRA framework and events. What does a program like Stars4Media bring, apart from what we've just said with Thomas, Andy, and Lois? What else would you say?
Yeah, I don't know if I should present a little bit about who we are. We work for Altinget, which is a medium-sized specialized media that focus on politics in Denmark. And we now have this brilliant partner from Italy, Open Polis. And we realized there's a big demand for data from our readers, and beginning to experiment with data journalism. And then through this media program, we got in touch with Open Polis that are really brilliant in data journalism. So we really learn a lot from them. So this is great. No, I think what was my point is that one thing is that media grants give a capital injection. Is that there's a lot of other things that you get, and some of the points that I have is that it's really a push factor to make things happen within the organization. You know, a lot of good development projects are often postponed or put aside because there's always focus on core business when you make development. But these kind of grants actually make some reasons to actually get them up from the drawer and focus on it and make innovation in your business, because you have some external expectations and some deadlines where you need to deliver, and you don't just postpone it or prioritize something else. I think also, like, when you are focusing on a grant, you have maybe a good idea, but because you have, you have to align with the grant purposes, so you're sort of forced to be creative, and you give a little more, you set the bar a little higher to make sure that they choose your project, and that's also like pushing or forcing some extra creativity into your projects. Yeah, well, that's a few of the things that I want to highlight, and like the others have mentioned, to get new competences inside your business is really valuable. For example, I mean, as I mentioned, this project where we have a partner from Italy that just knows all the things that we don't within data journalism, and I can mention a lot of other examples as well. So that's really important. for us with these kind of projects. And I think maybe that's what I miss a little bit about this this grant, is that the community level, that we didn't have the chance. I know that was planned, but because of Corona, we didn't have the chance to meet up, all of us, and make the connections and meet the network and exchange ideas. And I think that's also one of the things that you get out of this kind of grants, to join a community, share ideas, get inspiration that you don't have in your own little bubble within your own organization. So yeah, I really hope that this will be possible later on.
Thank you, Christopher. So do we, I think. I mean, this is the first live event I've actually done in 2 years myself, so I'm happy to be here. But soon we hopefully can get you all together. From what you were saying, because we're close to the end, I'll just summarize the idea that an organization can decide on funding even, or putting in place, implementing an innovative project. But the fact that you do this in the framework of a project like Stars4Media helps, because obviously there's kind of a pressure to deliver, deadlines, deliverables, the obvious, the finances we discussed, of course, but also as you ended with talking about the community, being part of a community. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there's 185 of you, only 4 of you there on screen, but actually 185 of you. So we will be thinking of how we can, in these conditions, in 2021 and 2022, how we can try and build this community a little bit more, maybe more than digitally, maybe do an event live next year. We actually have a meeting later on where we'll be discussing namely this issue. But thank you, the 4 of you. I think we're close to the end of time, and I know Christoph's probably bubbling to I see he has 5 pages of notes. So I'm going to offer him 3 minutes more. Thank you very much, all of you, for being with us today, and good luck with the rest of the implementation. I'll be in touch very soon. Christoph.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Very well done, and thanks you for the 4 stars that you picked from our constellation of 185 stars. I will not bring overall conclusions. There will be some follow-up, and which I will mention under next steps. I would like to mention now 4 things which I've noted under the heading Converge and Share. You remember I said I would use some set keywords. Under Converge and Share, I noted 4 practical things. And under Innovation and Speed, I noted even more practical next steps. First of all, I'd like to build on the last point. How about meeting and sharing ideas even more intensely? It's amazing that this kind of project actually does work despite the huge barriers that we have since 2 years. We will have a big meeting in April, which will be hopefully a physical meeting with all the Stars4Media project carriers from this edition, the previous one. Maybe it will be the launch of the next edition of Stars4Media. Second point, we have heard today mainly about relatively small media companies, and they will remain most welcome. Euronews is not a small company, it's I would say a medium-sized company. Don't worry, we are not talking of involving giant media companies, because they don't exist. Compared to Google and Facebook, there are no giant media companies, not even in the US, and certainly not in Europe. And this is a little bit my second point, is that we have to help the medium-sized companies which exist at national level to cooperate with each other, nationally or across border, where there is less competition issues, of course, in order to get to this critical mass. The third point is that I heard most speakers, maybe less directly during the last session, but the previous 2 sessions, I heard most speakers strongly endorsing the exchange of data, including content. And I stress this notion. It's not content on the one hand, nice editorial projects with no funding after the subsidy, or on the other hand, huge technological developments which are only reachable for big US platforms. No, it's bringing things together, content and data, different media actors from different countries, and building something sustainable. The fourth point which I'd like to mention under Converge and Share, is actually based on questions which were put to me just before. There was a question on the chat. I have to summarize, and it's no time to give recognition to individuals, but it's basically how can EU institutions, and Alberto, I hope you listen, how can EU institutions help bridge silos very clearly visible in the media sector? That's a good question, and I would add the question that Pedro Ortun was putting. Pedro Ortun, a former director at DG GROW, now a senior fellow with MediaLab, and he was asking for the floor, but I will repeat his question. He says, these media associations which claim to represent the media sector, they are actually themselves very fragmented. How could the EU institutions help to overcome that? Let me give my own opinion, because I know about other economic sectors. Most European federations were created at the instigation of the European institutions. They told the sectors, if you want to be heard very clearly, then you need to bring things together. And we have a number of media associations, and each of them has a very small staff. It's part of the problem. It's a public side. The public affairs is basically fragmented by languages and by countries. Some people say it's inherent. No, there are many cultural industries also depending on languages, which are not organized on a national basis. So one day it will change. The question is when it will change. I'm not confusing a European media sector with the specialized players like EURACTIV and a few others. They can play a role, but the big national media need to come together at least on a cooperation basis, or maybe more. That's why I mentioned also the role of the competition commissioner before, Margaret Vestager. Some media people still think, oh, we cannot merge, we cannot go together because DG competition will forbid it. That would be pro-competitive, actually, given the current fragmentation of the sector. I now move quickly to the 4 next steps which I wrote under innovation and speed. First of all, I'd like to repeat the call for ID that Alberto Rabakin from the Commission made. He said, and I think even more clearly than other officials before, he said, we would welcome your input. I think he even used the word specifications. I know there are limits to how far it can go. Clearly the specifications are for the EU institutions, but input can be provided. And there is a flurry of new programs developing. I will not try to list them again. And as I said before, it can be bottom-up, like ideas which start in Stars4Media or other programs and which mature, maybe small media companies which work with bigger media companies. I'm myself on the board of the European Digital Media Observatory, which plays a role for projects which are more related to disinformation. And next to it, there is a big fund being created with 30 million euros. It's called the European Media and Information Fund. And this will actually promote the cooperation between small media companies and larger media companies regarding disinformation. So it's not all dependent on the European Commission and therefore the Parliament, etc. Very good, but relatively slow processes. It's also in the private sector, guided by some good European governance, that things can happen. And I repeat the call also for foundations to get involved in that, because it's so important for democracy. The next 3 practical steps are much shorter, and indeed they are about the follow-up to this event today. There will be press coverage from tomorrow. There was already plenty of social media activity. Do continue to use the hashtag Media for Europe if you want to put your own conclusions, your own thoughts at the end of this meeting. Secondly, we will publish later today a press release and also the executive summary about the feasibility study on the content sharing platforms. So this is really food for thought. As part of the press release, there is also a link to the video statement by Vice President Jourova and the text of her speech. I think there are sentences which are really worth quoting in further media coverage or also on social media. And the last next step is, as mentioned already, on November 21, there is the European News Media Forum. I remind everybody that this is part of the news initiative, news in capital letters, so not news like Des Nouvelles, but there is a new program or a bundle of projects which is in the shaping. It was announced in the Media Action Plan. It was developed at the request of a number of MEPs and stakeholders, including Europe MediaLab. Probably most of you have heard of the misnomer media program in capital letters as well. It's not about media, it's about supporting the film industry and to some extent audiovisual. And as such, it's very successful. Maybe half of Europe's film industry would have died without this program. Well, the idea of the news bundle is to do the same for the news media. And that will be a source of inspiration for the kind of programs which have been described earlier by Alberto Rabakin. I expect these connections to be made very clearly at the News Media Forum on the 29th of November. We will play a small role, notably by summarizing this feasibility study on content sharing. And finally, we are most open to feedback about this event and about any policy or project initiatives which can be relevant for the about 10 different consortium partners which are represented in the 3 projects that are behind today's conference. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, especially to those who have been watching online since 2.5 hours with just a small coffee break. As I said, in April, we organize a bigger session under the same heading, Media for Europe, again with Stars4Media, again with things about content and data sharing, and there I really hope to see you in the room. Thank you. À bientôt.